Reactions to tourists in Japan. When talking about tourists in Japan, where do they all tend to go? Well, tourists in Japan tend to congregate in the same three prefectures, these being Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. Now, the Japanese government has recently been trying to promote tourists to explore outside of the city in an attempt to make cities less crowded, and this can be seen on many travel sites promoting more rural destinations in Japan when you are planning your trip over there. Now, the citizens' reaction to all of this tourism has been a bit mixed depending on where they live. For those living in major cities who have to deal with this in their daily lives, it's become a bit of a nuisance for them. However, for those living in rural parts who don't see this in their daily lives, it is not as noticeable of an issue, and they do not complain about it as much. However, what seems to be really bugging citizens, no matter where they're coming from, is that the tourists coming into their cities seem to have a total lack of understanding about the cultural practices of the people in these countries. One example is that many foreigners visiting Japan don't wear face masks when out in public, which is a very common practice in Japan. And then the tourists who are visiting often treat the people of the country as if they're zoo exhibits, looking into their homes and invading their personal space, which is just really rather rude. And if it happened here out west, we wouldn't appreciate it much either. The government's reaction has been similar to the citizens, although they promote tourism and have a very positive outlook on it because it has become a main pillar of their economy. With all the issues that have popped up with the record number of tourists entering their country, the government has begun to take a few measures to combat these problems and calm the annoyed populace. In the past, Japan has enacted tourist taxes on popular destinations like shrines and temples, but now they've erected a sign blocking a popular view of Mount Fuji because so many tourists have been going there, littering, loitering, and just creating nuisances for all the people who live there and the locals. And in light of these problems, Japan, their government specifically, has tried to create more sustainable tourist spots throughout the country in these more rural areas to try and spread out the crowds. But this has been more or less effective. Now, what can we as tourists do? Well, the most important thing for us as tourists is to take the time to understand the cultural practices of where we are visiting. This is a general for Japan, but it can vary from where you visit, or it can vary from place to place on where you visit. In Japan, this can come in a variety of shapes and forms, but some of the most important are wearing masks in public settings, not speaking loudly in public spaces or in public transportation, not following proper etiquette in bathhouses, like wearing bathing suits, taking photos at inopportune times and doing so in a very disrespectful manner. Just remember to spread out while you're there. Like I mentioned earlier in the slide, over-tourism plagues Japan's three hotspots. Travel outside the cities, ride the trains, ride the buses, or just ask locals. You'd be surprised at everything you'll see. Enjoy your travels. Have a good one.